finding a niche, because there's people that say, I want to do this, I do this, I do this. And the business isn't successful because they don't even know what they do. So how do you find a niche that you can stick to and give it 100%?
So one of the exercises I make my clients do is write out the yes list. So what are the 3 things that if you could only say yes to those for the next 5 years, what would they be? Because that's going to help you to figure out what are you actually passionate about. Because most of the people I work with are highly talented. They have so many different tools that they've acquired over the years that they can pull in, and then they try and use I always say, using all the crayons in your box. And it's really confusing to have that many crayons because most people don't have that many crayons in their box that they could be using. And so they're like, you can't be an expert at all those different things. And so you really want to niche down into what you are most masterful at. It doesn't mean you don't get to pull those other crayons in. You still get to use all the tools. You're going to naturally use them because your brain has been changed by what you've acquired. But you need to take yourself and package yourself and put yourself out to the market in a way that they go, I get it. I get what you do. Because the minute there isn't clarity, or the minute there's a question in their mind as to your credibility, what your mastery, then they're going to go, I don't really want to get on that phone call. They might book it and then do some investigating and then they back out. So you really need to package yourself in the most clear way so that people get you instantly what you do.
What's going on, guys? It's your Javi David St. Clair Speaks, and you are now tuned in to the St. Clair Speaks Show.
You are now tuned in to the St. Clair Speaks Show.
Welcome back to the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast. I'm your host, Javi St. Clair, sitting down with another incredible guest. This is going to be very, very exciting. Today, we are going to dive into all things personal brand and branding and the power of brand. All right, so I'm sitting down with Dr. Angela Mulrooney. She's a global speaker, best-selling author, personal branding expert. She works with thought leaders from around the world to clarify a clear message through building a brand archetype while using various media platforms like LinkedIn, podcasting, and various other platforms to drive sales so experts can change the world with what they know. Angela, I want to welcome you on to the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast. Please give our listeners a 3 to 5 minute introduction on yourself, your brand, and your business, and what brings you onto the show.
Well, originally I was a dentist. That's where the doctor part comes in. And I was fortunate enough to build my dream practice. And then worst case scenario happened and I got injured. And it was actually my dental career that ended my dental career. So I ended up having to go on this journey of reinvention. I spent the next 2.5 years still maintaining my practice, which was catering to people who were afraid of the dentist and working with associates in place. And then the oil crisis hit in 2015. And I realized I didn't really want to go through that with associates. And so I decided to sell my practice. I took a year completely away from dentistry and went back to dancing professionally and built my dance company called Unleashed Dance Company. And in the first 6 months, we became the second largest adult-based Latin company in our city. That year away from dentistry allowed me to start kind of putting the pieces together of why I had lost my career, why I had built this amazing thing that just kind of burned to the ground because of my health. And I realized there was a silver lining that I had learned a lot of lessons from, the owner dying halfway through our deal, to me being sued by my employees, to me losing my career, which is worst case scenario. And I wanted to take that and help other dentists to have an easier path. So I took to LinkedIn, started talking about what I knew about dentistry, I knew about niching and passion, and built Unleashing Dentistry's Potential, which is a business coaching company just for dentists. And in a year, I went from 200 to 12,000 dental industry followers. Then people started to go, can you do that for me? And so I started to tamper with a few of my friends' LinkedIn profiles to see if I could get them the same results, and I could. And so at the beginning of 2020, I launched Unleashing Influence and hired on 2.5 full-time employees. 2 months later, the pandemic hit, almost exactly 2 months to the day. And my team actually said, if you need to lay us off, the world's getting laid off right now. It's totally okay. And instead I said, let's hunker down and see what we can do. By 10 months into the pandemic, I had 14 full-time team members working for me. So that company just took off because the world shut down. A lot of people that I knew, they were speakers. They were people who were used to networking or speaking from the stage and getting that exposure. And now they had no way to fill their pipeline. So they came to me asking me to help them with their LinkedIn profiles, and it grew. January 2021, I decided to move to Nicaragua and got here and realized I was sitting in my office 100 hours a week in paradise, not enjoying paradise. So I started divesting. I actually sold my dance company before I left the country. I sold off Unleashing Dentistry's Potential, and I sold off the agency part with all the employees of Unleashing Influence, and just niched down into exactly what I do, which is helping people through 90-day masterminds take their high-level careers, their high-level experience, pivot through their personal brand, get out there on LinkedIn to build out a new way of making money with the freedom that they want, using that experience in the way that they feel like they're making the biggest difference so they can change the world with what they know.
Okay, I got a lot of questions for you, and there's so many ways I could go from there. My first question for you was, because I know it wasn't easy, but what was it like pivoting from being successful in one career to walking towards the complete unknown? Like, at what point did you let go of the old you and lean forward and give it 100%?
I don't think I let go of the old you until probably fall last year. So I carried on to that. I was really successful as a dentist. I built this amazing practice, and I have no idea what to do with myself now. Because I wanted to be a dentist since I was 2, and I was 32 when the injury happened. So that had been my identity for most of my life, was that Angela was going to be a dentist. And then I became a dentist, and my dreams came true. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be a dentist forever. I love playing with teeth, power tools, and blood. This is amazing. And then when that ended, I spiraled. I had no idea who I was. My identity and my career were so intertwined that not having my career left me with no identity. So it took a really long time. And I think that's why I know that's why I took the opportunity to go and build my dance company. I took the opportunity to build the business coaching company for dentists. I took the opportunity to build Unleashing Influence because I was really trying to figure out, what should I be contributing to the world? How can I change the world with the skills that I have at the highest level that I can possibly contribute?
Angela, that is so relatable, though, right? Like that. I've known this for so long. I wanted to do this since I was 2. Then feeling like you don't have a source of identity, that is just so relatable. How I relate to that is, prior to this podcast, I was doing personal training full time for 9 years. The entire world shut down. Had to pivot like everyone else. Launched a show, and it was the thing, right? So I totally agree with that feeling of, because you feel so empty when you feel like you have no identity, right? Ah, man, that's pretty interesting. Okay, which kind of leads me to my next question. And when I took the pause from personal training and I stopped completely, I seen why I was so successful for so many years, because it was niche down. Can you talk to us about the importance of finding a niche? Because there's people that say, I want to do this, I do this, I do this, and
Right.
the business isn't successful because they don't even know what they do. So how do you find a niche that you can stick to and give it 100%?
So one of the exercises I make my clients do is write out the yes list. So what are the 3 things that, if you could only say yes to those for the next 5 years, what would they be? Because that's going to help you to figure out, what are you actually passionate about? Because most of the people I work with are highly talented. They have so many different tools that they've acquired over the years that they can pull in, and then they try and use I always say, using all the crayons in your box. And it's really confusing to have that many crayons, because most people don't have that many crayons in their box that they could be using. And so they're like, well, you can't be an expert at all those different things. And so you really want to niche down into what you are most masterful at. It doesn't mean you don't get to pull those other crayons in. You still get to use all the tools. You're going to naturally use them because your brain has been changed by what you've acquired. But you need to take yourself and package yourself and put yourself out to the market in a way that they go, I get it. I get what you do. Because the minute there isn't clarity, or the minute there's a question in their mind as to your credibility, what your mastery, then they're going to go, I don't really want to get on that phone call. They might book it and then do some investigating, and then they back out. So you really need to package yourself in the most clear way so that people get you instantly what you do.
Very good points. But that kind of like goes right into my next question for you, right? what are foundations for a successful personal brand? Because Angela, people are so innovative today where they're building brand off just anything and everything. But what are some foundations for a personal brand to be successful?
You have to know what you're talking about. If you try to copy what someone else is doing because you're like, oh, well, I think I could do that, and you don't actually have a background in it, people are going to Swiss cheese your knowledge super fast, and you're going to run out of things to talk about. So don't try to fake it until you make it. Own exactly where you're at and leverage what you have right now. You will evolve, and that's natural. No one is going to be a one-trick pony for the rest of their life. They're going to have other tricks that they bring in, and they may evolve to those other tricks. It'll be a natural progression. But one of the biggest things is be real about who you are. Be okay with not knowing everything. Be okay with knowing what you know right now and put that out there. Another part of it is, again, package yourself properly. When you are going to be putting out content, make sure it's on brand. Make sure it is pointing towards that niche of mastery that you have, not one of those extra skills that you have that they're going to go, where did that come from? I don't understand now who you actually are. So you want to be extremely intentional with how you're crafting your content. And when I say intentional, you want to think about, okay, what are the things that people are telling you when you're on a call with them that they're struggling with? How do you thread that through your content so that as they're listening and getting educational points that they can take and run with themselves, they're also having this little ick feeling where they're like, ugh, I really do need to talk to Angela about this, you know? So you want to be intentional with how you're crafting things, not just be like, oh, I'm just going to riff about this and hope for the best. You actually need to be very clever with how you're doing things because it takes time, it takes money to produce good content. And so every step you take, you want it to give you the best bang for your buck, the best bang for your time, because time is our biggest resource that we can't get back. And if you want to get there fast, you have to be very careful with what you're doing, be intentional, plan it out, make sure that it's completely on brand every time.
Okay. Now we're talking my language. Now let's talk content. I'm rolling up my sleeves here and I've done my homework. And, I want to talk to you about LinkedIn because I have this thing of LinkedIn. The LinkedIn algorithm is very unpredictable. It changes every day. So there's no one that's a complete master of it because it's unpredictable. With being on the topic of content, right? Pushing out content and building personal brand off content. Platforms like LinkedIn, and I want to kind of like play devil's advocate with you. That's where I'm going with this because I want to ask you about TikTok. I'm seeing a lot. There are people that I know on LinkedIn, but I really know them on TikTok because of the depth that the platform creates for you. And there's so many different ways where you could get more traffic and more business. On LinkedIn, it's a little bit more, it is a little bit more tricky. So I want to talk to you about social media as a whole. What platform is really sticking out to you where you see industry thought leaders should maybe put more time into pushing out their content?
You really have to understand who you're going after and where they're spending their time. And you need to be creating content that plays to the algorithm. You need to be creating content that plays to your audience so that they are able to consume it the way that they want. For me, I built Unleashing Dentistry and I built Unleashing Influence 100% through organic content and just messaging outreach. So no paid advertising. Everything was getting my message out there, getting on conversations, and those two things work really well together on LinkedIn. And if you're going after an audience of professionals or you're going after people where you need to get to the decision makers and you need to know that you're getting to the decision maker, that's where LinkedIn comes in. And people still think of that as a business platform. It's not an entertainment platform. They tried to bring in stories on LinkedIn and it failed so fast. It was awesome.
I remember that. I remember.
Please don't let this work out. This is terrible. And so it depends on the personality of people that you're going after. If they're like hyper type A's, LinkedIn is where you want to be. If they're high-level professionals, LinkedIn is where you want to be. If they're heads of corporations, LinkedIn is where you want to be. TikTok, yes, has lots of benefit. And if your audience is on there, go there all day long. If your audience is on Instagram, go there. If they're on Facebook, great. If they're on Twitter. But you really need to understand who your people are, how they want to consume content, where they're spending their time for. their social media time, because everyone's doing social media on some level, whether it's YouTube or something else, and hunker down on that platform. Because unless you have a massive team behind you, like Gary Vaynerchuk, who can put everything everywhere, you're going to be spread too thin and not get many results if you aren't actually targeting that one platform that's going to give you the best bang for your buck. And you may have to experiment on a few different ones when you're starting out to see where those people are and how they want to consume, if it is the right platform.
Great answer. Great answer. Now I want to talk to you about, because that's a very, very good answer. Spreading yourself too thin is like, I'm
It's
a
easy.
victim of that. No,
Just
I'm
spread-
definitely a victim of that. You know what it is? Because, let's use Instagram Reels, for example. Man, I can tell you, I love those Instagram Reels. So I started creating daily motivational content. And it was a day, it was my daughter's birthday. I was at the park, pulled myself aside, 30-second video. I posted, I shared it, some subtitles, call to action, went viral, 40,000 views. I was blown away. Shared it on LinkedIn, 15 views. Like, come on. So it's like, when I see that, I see a little sign of hope. I guess that's where I commit to spreading myself a little too thin.
Yeah. And LinkedIn is tricky. Like, people are really cheap about their likes and their comments and everything else, because it's your reputation on the line. So if I go and like your stuff and someone from my audience is like, I don't agree with that, I didn't think that was good, I didn't like your comment on that, now that reflects on you, even if it wasn't you who posted that piece of content. So people are very careful. But here's the thing you need to be measuring. When you're having conversations with them, are they bringing up your content? When you're having conversations with them, are you actually getting them to buy from you? So I don't really care if I have anyone like or comment on my stuff. It drives sales all day long. And I have people come on who have never engaged publicly with my content, who are like, oh my God, I watch your stuff every week. I love it. I love your newsletter. I love your videos. Please keep doing what you're doing because it inspires me so much. I want to work with you. So to me, I really don't care about the aesthetics of the engagement to the public of what they can see. I care about, am I connecting with people? Are they getting what they need from me? And is it actually turning into sales that are valuable for them, that they're actually going to change their lives with how I help them?
It's a gem right there. Okay, so there was this quote, and this has resonated with me for a long period of time. I always repeat this quote, right? No one cares about your brand until they know your story. And one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about the podcast is storytelling. And I get a lot of return on investment on my time doing this podcast, not financially, but just in relationships as a whole, just conversations in depth. And of course, I use this for my personal brand, take some snippets and sound bites here, repurpose. I see that works for me. I want to talk to you about the importance of the story behind the brand, and why is that important for brands to have that? Yeah, you can have a carpet cleaning business, but if there's no story behind it, right? Can you talk to us about, including story and branding?
Including story and branding is super important right now because we've changed our buying habits. Before, it'd be like, if you had a perfect website, if you had perfect photography, if you had perfect videography, that was what was selling. The pandemic, it was happening before the pandemic, but the pandemic really woke us up to what we value and who we want to connect with and who we want to spend our money with. And so people are seeking out, are you a good human being? Okay, yes, you have to have an amazing product or service. That's a given. But if they're choosing between two different products and services, they want to know the human being behind it. They want to know if you have shared values, especially if you're in the US, there is so much going on with people having completely oppositional values that people may not buy from you because your values are completely different from them. So people want to buy from people that they connect with. They want to buy from people that they have similar values to. And so sharing your story is so important. And they also want to know that you've been on that path. There was a long time where people were becoming coaches in industries that they had never been in. And they're like, I'm an expert. I can change your world. And I just finished my certification. Come buy from me. And people are now like, I would never. You never walked that path that I'm walking. So how would you ever understand what I'm doing? So when you show that story, you show what you've been through, and not just the glamorous, oh, I've been amazing at all this stuff. They want to see that you've been in the mud. They want to see that you've been where they are right now, and you have the tools because you've had the experience to actually help pull them back up to rise to the challenge.
Teachable moments for you in business. What have been some teachable aha moments with you, like doing what you're doing now after, being successful in dental?
The biggest teachable moments were, everyone, when they start a new endeavor, they're like, I can save everybody, I can help everyone. And so you take on clients that you shouldn't. And so remember I mentioned the yes list at the beginning? So I have a yes list of the skills that I am willing to do for the next 5 years. I have a yes list of the kind of clients that I will work with. And if you don't fit the qualifications of that client, I will say no, and I will pass you on to someone else. And that is one of the biggest things that I think it takes time to get that confidence that by turning away people, other people will show up. That's a scary thing when you're like, I need all this, anything that comes to me, I will say yes, I will figure it out, right? And it actually is the worst thing that you can do because it's exhausting. It pulls you in all these different directions that you don't want to be in. Especially if you're trying to niche into your mastery, you don't want to be doing things outside of that mastery because that is going to confuse the market because someone's going to recommend you for that. And you're like, oh, but I don't do that. And they're like, well, you did that for my friend. Can you do it for me? And so suddenly you're getting pulled off your path that you just tried to hone in on to create your mastery in.
That's a very good point. Now, thank you for sharing. So, okay, this is about to get really interesting. So, there are so many different ways, to just share content, build more community. I'm on like social audio, and I've seen a lot of other people just take off. Right when Clubhouse came on, a lot of people took off. Now there's Twitter Space, there's Wisdom, there's Fireside. People are being pulled in various different directions, and I'm sorry to say, but most people have a really short attention span. So if you're seeing this, you're scrolling up and down. If I don't have subtitles going, it's not gonna stop the scroll. So we talked about content briefly, but I kind of want to jump back into content. Something that's been on my mind recently has been content depth, right? Like, because life is a long-term game, right? So what is like for you, what does that strategy look like? Because I've had people on the show, and this is January, by the way. Yeah, our content is booked out for the rest of the year. Like, that's how they do it. And there's some people that could create content daily, weekly, but that content depth. You mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk. Love Gary V. Love Gary V. And I use a lot of Gary V's techniques, right? I could take this soundbite, put this in a newsletter, repurpose this here. A pet peeve for me is I hate when people say, I don't know how to make content. Did you know you can make content from saying, I don't know what I should do about my content, and just pull people in? So what are some, I kind of want to talk to you about the don'ts, because you said something like people want to know, you got it out the mud, right? The ugly side of business, the ugly side of being an entrepreneur, because not every day is a successful day. Why is this such a tongue twister? So hurdles, how do you overcome them? How do you build a confidence to take that leap? Because sometimes we're faced with that imposter syndrome, which is why some people are a little bit more hesitant on pushing out content. And again, I've done my homework. You have something on your profile about why thought leaders are hesitant on sharing their content and how they're viewed. I hope I framed that question right for you, by the way. Can you explain this to me? How can we break through that wall?
So I always talk about these little gremlins that we have sitting on our shoulder telling us, don't do it. So oftentimes what will happen is we hear ourselves ask ourselves, like, who's going to listen to me? Who's going to consume this? What if they hate what I put out there? Or what if they steal what I put out there? Those are the big things that stop people from creating content. And those are just our perfectionism getting in our way. You know what? People might steal your content, but they're not going to be able to present it the same way because they don't have that same experience. They don't have the same expertise. They don't have the same passion as you do. And if you try, like I've had people copy my content. I've had people call me and be like, I heard so-and-so tell that same story that you told and try and use the same example. I'm like, it's going to happen. People see things and they try and emulate. But I don't recommend doing that because it's not real. It's not you. So you want to be okay again with who you are and what you're actually trying to do. But if people try and steal it, they're going to get Swiss cheese when someone asks them a question about something that has to do with depth. Someone can learn the macroscopic of what you do, but they're not going to understand the microscopic because they haven't been on the same path as you. So that one we can just throw out the window. And if someone else shows up and is talking about something, the same stuff you're talking about, or same stuff you wanted to talk about, and they were first to market with it, who's going to get the credit for it? The person who was brave enough to step up, even though they were afraid someone was going to steal their idea. So it might as well be you. If people hate what you're doing, that's okay. You actually want to create content that's going to polarize your audience. So you're going to have people who love what you do. You're going to have people who hate what you do. Are you going to pay attention to the haters? Yeah, okay, they're going to hurt your feelings and they're maybe going to give you a few sleepless nights, but they're not your ideal audience. They don't like what you're doing. So then you concentrate on the people who love what you do and you put your focus on them and create content that is going to grow them because they have the same values. They're seeing themselves in you and they actually want to work with you. So yeah, we're always going to have these little gremlins come out who are like, you probably shouldn't do that. And that's an easy way to get ourselves to stop. And if you are trying to wait until the perfect moment to create content, you're never going to do it. And you can be years behind when you finally actually do it versus if you had just gotten brave, put the camera on and just started. And you might suck at first, but you'll get better. You can learn this stuff.
Yeah. I'm glad you're on video. I'm glad we're doing video. What are some tips and suggestions to confidence on video? Because if you're not confident on video, it just shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where like shows it in the way you speak, your body language, confidence on video. Talk to us about that.
It takes practice. When the pandemic hit, I had 30-year speakers come to me because this little black hole completely made them freeze. They were used to speaking to stadiums of thousands of people and killing it. And then when they had to start delivering content online, because that's where things were, if you want to speak, you were doing webinars online. That little black hole messed with their heads really, really badly because they weren't getting that feedback. They weren't able to bring the energy that they would if they had a whole bunch of people responding to them and they were able to feed off them. So it does take practice. Even if you are a seasoned speaker or a seasoned content creator, you're going to have moments where that black hole freaks you out. One of the things I recommend is actually learning some skills for the camera. So I teach people how to actually use their voice properly. So you create some variety. So you're interesting to listen to because nobody wants someone who's monotone. No matter how smart you are, really boring, right? And you also want to bring your personality. People are used to seeing us in 3 dimensions, right? So there's all this energy that comes out of us. When we're on camera, we got 2 dimensions. So you have to bring it a bit bigger and it will feel like you are way too excited. But when you go back and watch the video, you're gonna be like, oh, yeah, no, it wasn't really over the top. It could have actually been more to make it more interesting. So teaching the energy of how to use the camera, teaching how to use your hands. Most people are terrible. I feel like I'm in this tiny little box. I'm used to like being a bit more expressive, but you're not used to using your hands. So if you are boring and you don't have anything going on, there's no movement aside from your mouth and you blinking, it's not very fun to watch. And then we have the ability to use our space. Yes, we are confined to this little black box, but we can emphasize by getting closer. We can move on the camera as well to use the space to create more entertainment value. And that entertainment value doesn't mean I need to be dancing on camera. It means I need to be creating visual excitement and auditory excitement so that people actually want to listen to the high level, amazing expert content that I'm creating that is going to change their life.
Very good point. You gotta get your reps. You gotta get your reps in, right? You gotta show up on video. Be consistent on video. I don't know. I just feel like I'm at this point on video where it's just like I've done this for I release episodes daily. I do so many interviews, so I'm very confident on video. So I'm comfortable being laid back. And then some days where I'm like full throttle, I'm like this. But
Yeah.
I think you mentioned the personality component, right? Showing up as your authentic self. And like you said, yeah, people could see, right? Like people could see that on video. But
Yeah.
get out of your own head. People have to get out of their own head. So, best-selling author. I want to talk to you about your book. Tell us a little bit more about your book and lessons you've learned after launching your book.
So my first book was actually the best-selling one. It was called The Passion Pursuit. I locked myself in a hotel room for 5 days and wrote it out.
In 5
And
days?
5 days, yeah. I was like, nobody talked to me. I turned off my cell phone. I just disappeared off the grid and just wrote. And my second book, it took me a little bit longer, but similar kind of scenario where I just locked myself in. That one's called Unleashing Influence, the same as the company. The biggest thing I learned from writing a book is that it really does help you get organized. Whether you ever publish it or not, it helps you to think through the concept of what you're trying to do. And same thing happens if you're trying to write a program. Like if you're building a mastermind, writing out what you're actually going to take people through just helps you to understand your material better. The biggest thing I learned about the book is get experts to help you, right? My editor for my first book, honestly, she edited it and put in grammatical errors. And I had to go back and re-edit myself. And I was like, this, it would have been cheaper to not have her, but it would have been cheaper to also get someone who was an expert who could have moved that so much faster, moved it forward so much faster. So, do your research on who you're actually going to work with, like your relationships and who you let your reputations be handled by. You have to be very careful who that is. So you want to dig in. Don't just take someone's word that this person is great. Do some digging, get some references, take a look at their previous work and make sure that you are in good hands, because sometimes someone had a good experience because they were just a really good person who had it all together and they didn't need much guidance. But if you're struggling, it may not be the right person. So you want to get a few different stories to see if they actually are the right person.
Story, personal branding, niching down and the importance of that, everything that we talked about. Why is that so important for the listeners, and what do you want them to take away from that?
So many people are on the precipice of a pivot and they've walked the traditional path, they've done everything right, and they've kind of maximized their potential. And that pivot point will allow them to catapult themselves into a completely different level of potential. And it's scary. You're going to have people try to drag you back to the safety of exactly who you are. And then you're going to have your potential pulling you to where it knows that you can go. But being at that pivot point is so scary. It's super vulnerable, and you can be easily influenced either positively or negatively in that state because your brain is open to the possibilities, but it's also really scared. So if someone gives you an answer that like gives you the out from taking the pivot, you're going to take it. Talk to people who have done the pivot. That's what I help people do all day long. Is they come from corporate, they come to me, we package, we pivot, we build out the business behind leveraging their expertise in a new way. And I've done it over and over again. I had to pivot after I was a dentist. I pivoted after dance. I pivoted after my business coaching. So I've been through it a few times. I've made tons of mistakes, so many mistakes. And so I can show you the easiest path. And find the person who feels right to you, who has those values that you relate to, who can help you with that if you're going to do it. And your personal brand is an amazing vehicle for helping you to do that pivot. Whatever platform is good for you, pick that platform, get to know who the right clients are, get your messaging out there, and you can build your brand super easily. Anyone can do it, honestly. Anyone can package anything that they know to be able to help other people with it.
Okay. I guess I mentioned this a little earlier. I was talking about social audio. My question was my question of the day. I usually come up with these questions of the day and turn that into content. I was talking about coaching and mentorship today. Do you believe that mentorship and coaching is necessary in order for someone to get to the next level?
It's not necessary, but if you want to get there faster and make fewer mistakes, it is a tremendous asset, because someone else can bring in their knowledge and help your brain to expand faster. You only know what you know. You can only find out what you can find out with the research that you're doing. But if someone has been there, done that, and they can reach down and help pull you up faster and help you to not get sidelined by all the different mistakes that you can make, it's totally worth the investment. And I see people time and time again go out and try and do it on their own without any outside advice. And they come to me a year later and they haven't made any sales. They haven't made any progress. They spent a whole bunch of time building an amazing program, but they haven't sold anything. And to me, that's really expensive compared to, make the investment with someone, whoever you trust, whoever feels good to you, to help to guide you along the way, because it'll shorten your learning curve. It'll reduce the mistakes. It'll help you to get to that profitability so much faster and with so much less turmoil inside. Because when you screw up, when you don't really know what you're doing, it is defeating. It will mess with your brain. You'll have sleepless nights. You're going to lose money doing it. And it's quite an awful experience. And that's why a lot of people actually quit not very long after they actually start, is because they make those mistakes and it hurts their ego and they don't recover from it.
It's actually, yeah, when you really kind of like think about it, it's actually less, in my opinion, it's more expensive not to work with a mentor or coach versus it is, I'd rather just make the investment. Why? Because I don't want to pay double for the lesson I'll learn if I don't do it. So like that, it helps you skip the learning curve. That has always been important to me. But it's also, being coachable, right? You have to be coachable. We talk about ego. Ego gets in a lot. Ego definitely gets in the way when it comes to industry leaders. And I've interviewed a lot. I've interviewed a lot, and I've worked with some people. And when people that have strong personalities, they clash and they collide. It could be great, but it also could be a downfall of a really good business opportunity. So we got to know when to kind of like take that step back. So wrapping this interview up, I kind of want to talk about like the end message of what you want listeners to take away. But what can we get from being a part of your community? Like, what are clients saying? How can we get involved?
So I have a group called the Unleashing Influence Community on LinkedIn, which you'll get content from me at a faster pace than what goes out on my regular public feed. And it gives you those tips and tricks that will help to inspire thinking about your brand, how to actually create your brand, how to create content, how to get niche down into what you want to do. So it is tips on how to do it yourself. So you can get a little bit of runway yourself with that if you follow what I'm actually speaking about. And there's also other people who are on that journey as well. So you have support, which is quite lovely, because you're not there alone trying to figure this out or deciding if you're going to work with this coach or that coach or where you actually want to go if you're actually going to leave corporate. So I think it's important to have people along the journey with you who are experiencing the same thing, because we all experience the same fears and doubts. We just don't always talk about it. And when you know that other people are going through it as well, you don't feel like a freak. You feel like, okay, this is normal and I can keep moving forward.
And you have quite the following on LinkedIn as well. You definitely have quite the following. For anyone that's listening, Angela's contact info is going to be in the episode description. So you could click and it will take you directly to her profile on LinkedIn and for you to be a part of her amazing, really big community. It's a really big community. So I get really excited when I have a guest, and like this didn't feel like an interview. Like sometimes I get lost in the sauce. This felt like a conversation. So sometimes like I mentally go in this space of just conversation. Wrapping this up, what is it? Today is the 29th. Well, we're recording this on the 29th of June. What can we look forward to from you closing out, like the year or the beginning of next year, if you're open to sharing?
The big plans this year is just continuing to grow my 90-day masterminds and helping people to get those wins faster by hunkering down for those 90 days and really, intensively working on that stuff so they get to where they want to go. So that is my focus. I'm trying not to throw other things out there. I've got lots of opportunities to do other things, but I'm narrowing down my focus, niched into that so that I really can change the world with what I know at a faster pace than if I got distracted.
That's right. Sticking to the niche. See, the success is in the pudding. All right, Angel, please shout out all your social media handles, your website. Where can we follow you and keep up with all your amazing content?
So for social media, LinkedIn is my place. It's Dr. Angela Mulrooney. You'll put up the link exactly for that. If you need to get a hold of me via email, you can get me at angela@unleashinginfluence.com, and website is unleashinginfluence.com as well.
Awesome. This was, and I just love conversations like this where it just feels like a conversation, doesn't feel like an interview whatsoever. This is the content that I live for. I love this. And I must say, and we didn't talk about this, and I know we're towards the end, but we didn't talk about just the value in this, right? Networking and podcasting, because you meet people you have never would have crossed paths with. Angela, what are the odds of me and you crossing paths? It would have never happened, right?
Yeah.
But I like the fact that podcasting can bring us together. Now I hear your story. You've overcame an injury and created a new lane and career for yourself and a successful businesses for yourself. And like, I don't hear that without podcasting. So, man, Angela, I want to say thank you so much for spending your time with me today. This was amazing. For the listeners, I want to thank you for listening, watching. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed this. Like always, what good is information if we don't apply it? Apply what you've learned today, and I'll catch you in the next episode. I'm out. Peace.